The following podcast contains mature language. Listener discretion is advised.
Pinnypals After Dark. Animals were indeed harmed in the making of this. Seriously, we tested the fuck out of them.
Stop your grinning and drop your linen, because it's time once again for another installment of the After Dark podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the fine people of Corkboard Junction. If you've used up all your fucks acquiring pins and have none left for presentation, give the experts at Corkboard Junction a call. Corkboard Junction has been proudly serving this community since 2013. In this episode, we wrap up our Super Late West extravaganza and have dedicated the entire hour to the art and design of pins. See you fine folks on the other side. On our first episode, we did a review of the East pins from the Pin Quest that had dropped a few days prior. We tried to differentiate a little by adding more weight to the design itself, rather than the usual blanket criteria of, do I like/hate this IP? And, predictably, we got a lot of pushback, most of it in the form of, I like/hate this IP, therefore you are wrong, this pin is great/awful. So again, we decided to do a little something different when West rolled around. Instead of playing off the notoriously inaccurate Pin Quest and reverting to the mean opinion of IP über alles, let's review after the show, with pins in hand, and spend even more time talking about design. And while it's provably impossible to evaluate something you have deep attachments or aversions to in a vacuum, it's still an interesting exercise. And hopefully many of our fellow collectors will give more weight to design when it comes time for the next round of evaluations. A few weeks after West, Hingo and I sat down with Sireniti, TheFawnn, and Sammy.Sam, the design team behind the reasonably well-received Pinnypals After Dark pin, to talk shop. Here is the distillation of that very long conversation.
I hope you are holding on to your hat and socks, because I will now knock them off in a wild ride of viewing pleasure.
Sammy.Sam, Sireniti, TheFawnn, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Hi.
Sammy, starting with you. So what do you think makes a good pin design?
Well, what I look for in pin design is I'm looking for dynamic designs. I think a lot of the times that's what people are really responding to when they see a pin that they really like. You know, like a lot of times people see a pin, they're like, oh man, I really like that, but I can't really quantify what it is about that I like. It's the same with, like, say, figure sketching. If you have a very flat, static, like, front portrait image of somebody, it doesn't convey any motion, it doesn't convey any character. It looks pretty bland, but when you take that person and you pose them into, you know, like basically like an action sports photographer or something like that, it really conveys that sense of like movement and velocity, things like that. You can really capture a lot of those kind of themes in a visual medium, like pins. So I tend to gravitate towards designs that aren't just kind of static, you know, single dimensional sketches, and more towards things that kind of convey that sense of fluidity.
Sireniti, how about you?
The style aesthetic of the pin, I guess it would really depend on like what game it comes from and if it matches the style of that game. And that would sort of influence how much I like the pin also, in addition to the, you know, the metals and the color and the fill versus metal ratio, etc. And the boldness of the line also, I think, really depends on, like, you know, certain shapes would look better with a bolder line. And other ones, like, you can have those little fine line details. Yeah, it's really hard to generalize. I think it depends from pin to pin.
All right, Fawn.
I think the other two kind of touched on a lot of the things that affect my opinion of the design. I think what's really big for me is just the general kind of artistry of the pin. I think there are pins that kind of look like they were just made really quickly, and the result is that it's, you know, either like a really simple design or there's not much color to it or what have you. But other pins look like they were like a piece of artwork before they were made into a pin. And that's what I really appreciate about them. But yeah, color is a big one for me. And then, like Sireniti said, kind of that balance of metal to fill is pretty important as well.
So now that West is over, you've brought the pins home. You've actually had a chance to really look at it. I know you guys have some favorites, and I know you guys have some that are probably less than favorites. Why don't we just jump in and start talking about the things you guys liked from West?
By far, like one of my favorite sets, and I think I knew this was going to be one of my favorite sets when I saw the initial artwork for it, was the Destiny pin set. And I think one of the reasons why I like that one the most is, again, like I said earlier, when I look for pin design, I look for dynamic design, and this has dynamic design. To TheFawn's point when she was talking about pins a little bit earlier, she said she's looking for kind of artistic interpretation and bringing like an established piece of art into the pin medium, and I think this does this as well. I guess what it really comes down to is like one of the reasons why I think this set itself is so successful is because Mike Krahulik took the time and care and designed like just a pin set with a subject matter that really meant something important to him, which he then shared on a blog post about kind of how playing Destiny brings his family together. And I think that informs a lot of the attention to detail in this set and really like brings it all together.
I agree with Sam. I was really excited when I saw the artwork for this set when it was first posted. I thought it was an awesome looking set. I did notice at first that there was a lot of detail, which could be good or bad when you actually see the actual pins. But when I saw them and then I saw that there was glitter, that just sealed the deal. But if you look more closely at the high amount of detail on these pins, it is done extremely well. Like there are some pins out there that have a ton of detail and it's just too much. It's poorly done. It's just too busy. But when you look at these, it's just the shapes that are created by the metal outlines, I think go really well with the pin medium. Like there are a lot of tiny little lines, but they're very clearly defined shapes that you can fill with enamel. And I think that's like one really important thing to keep in mind when you're designing pins, that you kind of have to think of it like a children's coloring book where you have shapes and you need to fill them with colors. So I think whoever designed this set did an awesome job on it.
It was Mike, and you can really tell that like he's been doing this a while and he really knows how to design a really nice pin because they're gorgeous.
They're very reminiscent of Chandra Oss, that sort of design type. He has a lot of detail in here, like a little more detail than like the standard cartoon sketches of Gabe Tycho on the Thrice Weekly strip.
Yeah, he's really mastered kind of the balance of getting a lot of detail into a pin but not making it overly complicated or just convoluted.
So, Sam, you mentioned that you really liked a dynamic pin or seeing movement in a pin. And I agree with that when it's done well. And I actually didn't really like Chandra Oss. I thought the movement was kind of awkward. But with these pins, that's definitely not the case. It's very natural. It's a very naturally captured dynamic movement in these pins, as opposed to Chandra.
I mean, if you look at the poses, what is this blue one? It is not the Hunter, the Warlock. Yeah. It's very reminiscent. I would say the pose that the Warlock has is very similar to Oss Chandra, except this one is cut off almost like a bust.
Well, and the Warlock is the first pin that they've done any type of modification with the fill metal being geometric and not just being a circle or an arc, correct?
There's actually a couple others, and I know there's one in particular that TheFawnn wants to talk about later that uses the same technique. To Melissa's point, though, like one of the things that I think is informing her interpretations of this set and why she likes it, and I don't mean to speak for you, but you mentioned earlier about line weight and how it's important to have varying line weight to convey different angles and shading in drawings, and I think that a lot of that is present and translated into the pin form here.
Definitely, yes. There is so much depth to these pins. It's just amazing.
And I will also say, just as a last remark about this set in particular, that Glitter is hit or miss for me on some of these pin designs, but I think this was a very smart use of that medium to kind of convey just some special illumination and movement, and really give these characters some life.
I agree. There are lots. So like the Christmas 14 or 13 set, the one with all the red glitter, I absolutely hated, honestly. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I really did like the use of glitter in this one. It's just a little more subtle. I don't know if subtle is the right word, but it's just used much better than just this huge swath of glitter in one giant shape, which is what most of the Christmas set was.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see this a lot with pin traders that I've met, at least that I have met from like other communities and stuff. So like Disney pins, for example, there tends to be some people that will gravitate towards just all of the glitter, just the glitter explosion. Like they want sheets of it, and they want as much surface area on the pin to be sparkly as possible. In my opinion, that's a little gauche.
That's literally the worst.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, did you write down vajazzle, our next P-pad pin?
Vajazzle.
A little more.
We
glitter,
clearly
please.
did not
Yeah.
use enough glitter on the P-pad pin. Sam wants more glitter. That's what I'm hearing from this.
I would have also settled for, and again, I don't think a lot of pins have done this yet, but maybe a little bit of glow in the dark there.
Glow in the dark.
Oh yeah,
Just
definitely.
throwing that out there to you or anybody else listening.
I backed the little bub game Kickstarter, and they have a glow-in-the-dark glittery pin, and I am so excited for it.
And Sam, just to clarify, you mean intentional glow in the dark and not the random ass, hey, look, this color from PA happens to luminesce under black light, right?
Yeah, I don't mean like, hey, this glows on accident because there's something toxic in here in the enamel paint we're using.
Yeah, you mean along the lines of like the Gallery 1988 or Bottleneck Gallery pins. I believe the Alien one, the egg has glow-in-the-dark green ooze coming out of it.
Yeah, I mean that's a really smart use again of that medium. A lot of people, when they think about like pin designs and what are making good pins, they're not really taking an additional step in that creative process and translating. Okay, I have a sketch of something. How can I take advantage, or how can I leverage all of these unique physical elements that are going to be brought into existence when it becomes an actual physical item? I mean, we just talked about using the metallic surfaces in interesting geometric shapes to kind of accent designs. We talked about using glitter as an aspect. There are several different finishes for the metals. Each of them can dramatically change the way that a pin is going to look.
Which it kind of moves me into one of the other pins that I really liked, which is the Armello pin. Just because I think it was just a brilliant use of the metal versus the fill, and kind of like when we saw the picture of it the first time, I didn't know if they were going to make it kind of 3D or what was going to happen with that. And I think they just really pulled it off, in my opinion. I know it's probably not the most popular opinion. I don't know if people love this pin, but I love it. When I saw it in person the first time, I thought it was awesome. They almost have two different tones of metal going on, and it looks like it's raised up, but it's actually completely flat. And I just think it's a great use of the medium. They know what they're doing, and they made a really good pin.
I kind of disagree with that because... So I have the original Armello pin when they first launched their game. Jason, my boyfriend, got it in an indie box. And if you look at the actual Armello logo, it is meant to be shaded in a way that suggests a raised design. And the company Armello pin, not the PA Armello pin, itself is raised. It's a molded metal pin. I don't know. I understand what they were trying to do in creating a flat pin for the PA design. I don't really like how they did it. I think my issue is with the colors they use, because the yellows, okay, that's nice, but there's like a little bit of white in there that just kind of throws me off. And to me, it kind of just looks like someone took like the logo with all the nice shading that, really raises the image out of the computer screen or the piece of paper, and they just like kind of ran it through a program that, you know, cut out all the shapes, and then they like kind of filled in the closest tone to indicate all the depths and the reliefs and all that stuff. And I don't know, I just don't think they did a great job. I respectfully disagree with you, Chelsea. I do like the logo, the profile of the lion. I love the Armel logo. I haven't actually played the game, but it's been on my wish list forever. But I just don't like how they translated it from a raised pin to a flat.
It's funny, like all the things
correct
that.
me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is, fuck you, your opinion sucks.
It's true. We're gonna have an actual fist fight. We're gonna have a fist fight. It's fine.
Yes.
No, it's funny that like the things that you named as what you dislike are actually what I like. I'm like in my head, I think it's really cool that they took something that looks 3D and made it flat, but it still looks 3D. But that seems like that's what you don't like about it. But I don't think. Yeah. That's why we have different opinions.
I do like that they tried to do that. I just don't think they did it well. And maybe this is I don't know if I definitely don't think I could do a better job. I think somebody could, not me.
It's interesting too, because I actually tend to dislike the metal pins that are all metal and have, you know, physically raised pieces to them. I just kind of shy away from those. I just like flat, kind of hard enamel filled pins, as we all know because I talk about it all the time. But I think if it were 3D, when I saw the picture initially, I didn't know if it was going to be 3D or flat, and I already knew that if it was 3D, I wasn't going to like it. So as soon as I saw it and it was flat, I was like, yes, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue I have with like how they flattened it, so to speak, is that in the actual logo, there's a lot of blending, and the way they kind of portioned it out into pieces and then silk screened it was
feels
kind of
like
weird.
awkward.
I think my biggest issue is that like it's kind of like they silk screened, I believe, almost everything except for the black on this pin, and that was kind of weird to me. I guess It's probably just the silk screening that I don't like.
I could see that.
So this is easy to resolve. Fawn, who is your favorite, Jerry or Mike?
I mean, come on, we all know it's Mike.
Okay, so obviously Chelsea has terrible opinions, and Armello is not a good pick. Moving on.
Rude.
I mean, I will say that like I do like this pin, and I think that you can't really. It is difficult to make a decision on it until you look at it in person. It is one of those because of the way that these highlights are made out of the metal surface. You can't really see that. It's very difficult to photograph and get the full effect. And the web art doesn't really translate that.
Yeah, doesn't do it justice at all.
I'm no art person by any means, but I think this is probably the largest number of pins produced by a PAX that I've felt that way about. Looking at maybe a third of the pins that were released on this pin quest, I couldn't make a decision on until I saw them in person.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It was really hard to judge when we just saw the digital version.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought Deathclaw looked absolutely terrible on the pin quest.
Deathclaw and Emily,
I still think it looks
Emily
terrible.
was
and when
awful,
you got there,
and then I saw Emily
still
in
thought
person.
it was terrible, right?
I agree with Fawnn. I really thought Emily looked terrible, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
in
it's
real
a great
life.
pin.
Sam, are you talking about Deathclaw?
Yeah.
No, I gave it a solid C- instead of an F.
Yeah, I'm just ribbing you. I will say that I think it's unfortunate that the umbrella pin was made with the gold plating on it. It's going to tarnish real fast, and then all of these really interesting highlights are going to become a little more washed out when they get more silvery.
Yeah, it's going to get kind of muddy unless it's kept really nicely.
I mean, it's going to get muddy as it tarnishes, and then when you polish it out, like when you aggressively polish this gold plating, it tends to remove that layer of the metal, and it exposes
and it's like
the
really
silver
light
nickel.
and silver. Yeah.
I honestly would, if you guys have to polish it in the future, I would be careful because so much of it is silk screened on. So I don't know how. I think this is the most, aside from Skeleton Jim, I think this is the most silk screening I've ever seen on a pin.
So the message to our listeners is, 1, if you're going to polish your pins, please close your door. And number 2, please take extra care in polishing your pins.
Keep that Dremel under 8,000 RPM and you'll be fine. So, rumor has it there was this special D&D pin you can get by playing through an Acquisitions Incorporated mission with some of your friends. And I do believe that 2 people have that listed as one of their favorite pins from the show.
Do you mean the green flame pin?
Yeah, the best clip art pin since Castle Guy.
This pin is straight from the 90s, right? 90s skateboard, kid with a backwards hat, flipping an ollie.
No, seriously though, the Blue Dragon Lime Earth pin is the best pin at PAX West 2016. Like,
you're wrong, but go on.
No, I'm not. Sam, why don't you take it from here?
Put me in the hot seat, huh? I like the pin.
Hop on your steed and white knight her, Sam.
Sam, save me.
I like the pin. It's very angular. Let's do that again.
Just
Your
leave it at
mom's
that.
very angular.
Just stop it there.
I like the pin. I think the color choice. Oh fuck.
No, that's
Scroll
it.
that
You
back.
had it. I put you on the spot. Let me talk about it. Clearly, Sam can't talk. Sam can't get his thoughts together. The pin is great because kind of what we were talking about earlier, as far as like it looks like a finished piece of art before it was made into a pin. And it also looks like it was intended to be a pin, right? Like it looks like the designer knew exactly what they were doing before they made it into a pin, which to me means the colors translate well as kind of, the fill, and the line width is really good. And I kind of like just like the dragon character. I think it's drawn really well, which is kind of something that's like really important to me. I feel like that what I talked about earlier, the actual artistry of it is important. There are pins that are just kind of like shapes and it doesn't look like an actual artist made them. But this one, I don't know, it's really pretty, and yeah, I like it. I don't know. I can't talk about pins as well as Sam can, so Sam, please help.
Clearly.
Help.
I think it has a good color to metal surface area ratio. So when you rock it back and forth, it has a really nice sheen to it, just because of the way that it's been put together. It's been designed with all these color compartment segments, and not every pin does this, right? A lot of pins will have just wide areas of enamel fill.
Yeah, I think that's kind of something
or
that
large areas of silkscreen.
right, and I think that's something that kind of shows that when you have a really good pin design, it's because the designer, like you were talking about earlier, Sam, they know how to kind of utilize this medium, right? Instead of just being like, well, it's a pin, so I'm going to fill the whole thing with one block color because I don't know what else to do, because they're just going to fill it with paint. This designer clearly knew I can block these pieces off and it's going to look much more dynamic and much more interesting because I have all these little sections and I can use the metal to kind of offset that and make it look much more interesting than just a huge block fill of one color.
I do like the design a lot. In my opinion, it straddles the border on color choice in terms of contrasts. Mm-hmm. Some of the blues are almost like, I almost wish just like some of the highlights were a little bit more pronounced.
They're pretty close. Yeah, they're pretty close.
But I mean, overall, just the segmenting kind of helps that a lot. And again, like I said, the shine ratio on it is very nice.
The scale work on the neck is really well done too.
I agree that it's a very nice design. The character is really well done, and it's just a really nice looking pin. It's not one of my favorite, but I think Chelsea's absolutely right, in which the artists really knew what they were doing with the medium, converting this drawing into a pin.
Let's transition to Terrible Toy Box for Melissa to talk about this, because I also really like this pin, so I would love to discuss this.
And I love it too, and
Okay.
I want to hear what she has to say.
Yay.
Well, okay, so honestly, the first reason I was attracted to this pin is because I have a Nostromo patch pin from Alien. Nostromo is the ship, for those of you unfamiliar with it, and all the crew members wear this patch, and it's shaped like a semicircle, and it has a very similar color palette. The Thimbleweed Park pin immediately reminded me of the Nostromo patch, and I absolutely love the pin. I wear it to work every day because I'm a huge nerd. But I didn't realize which game this was. I actually demoed this game at East. I actually really liked it. It's a point-and-click murder mystery, and there's like clowns involved. It's kind of weird. But I actually really like the game, and I guess I forgot the title. It's pretty generic, Thimbleweed Park, I don't know. But looking at the pin and comparing it to the title screen of Thimbleweed Park, I think they did such a good job of turning it into this really rich bit pixel artwork style into a pin. It doesn't exactly make you reminiscent of the game at first, but then when you like really zoom in on the details, like it's absolutely the title page. There's the dead guy in the middle, and then the two detectives, which are kind of like Mulder and Scully, which is the two detectives remind me of Mulder and Scully. And you can see like one of them smoking a cigarette, which he does in the game constantly. And I don't know, the color palette's also very, very nice. So yeah, I don't know what other people think of this pin. The general consensus is that this is a very nice pin. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I actually think you brought up a really interesting point in that, like, when I first saw this pin, I had no idea what it was from, and I still don't, other than what you just told me. But you don't notice the details of it at first because it has such a nice color palette, and because it kind of like, I feel like the design is distributed really well and very evenly, and it's all kind of just like framed really nicely. I kind of just saw it as colors and shapes, and I was like, oh, those are pretty colors and shapes. But then I looked at it closer, and, you know, you see that there's like a guy laying down and he's dead. And then there's like a woman smoking a cigarette, and you start noticing all these tiny little things about it. And that's one of my favorite aspects of this pin and it's also really big. And I like big pins. But I knew as soon as I said that it was gonna be so bad. But whatever. No, I like the size of it. It's cool. And yeah, it's just really interesting. It keeps delivering. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's another really cool aspect of it.
Actually, I'm actually gonna go a little bit opposite of what you said. I thought it was gonna be much bigger when I saw it on the Pin Quest, and I was delightfully happy with the size of it when I actually saw it.
I will say that, yeah, like I don't agree, like, in terms of the size ratio on this guy. I think in context to the rest of the Penny Arcade pin catalog, this one is kind of a medium sized. I totally get the Nostromo reference, and I do love that a lot. It does have, I think, it's mostly like shape recognition here, the half dome, and also to an extent the color palette. It seems more like a, if we're going to put a time frame on it, like 70s, like late 70s, early 80s time frame, which is around when Alien came out.
I also, I really love what the artist who designed this pin went with it, because, like, it is a pixel-based art game, and there's so many curves in it, but yet there's, like, almost a grid. So, like, if you look really closely at the smoke trail coming up from the cigarette, it actually, like, it's not, like, a completely random, like, dynamic trail of smoke. It's actually, like, goes straight up, does a little squiggle, like, almost like it's following a graph, but it's curved, and then goes straight up again. And then if you look even closer, the metal actually protrudes beyond the curve of the pin, like the smoke protrudes beyond it, which I thought was a really cool, tiny little detail.
Thank you.
That is cool.
About time a designer decides that a circle can be broken. It's like the fourth fucking wall no longer exists in pin design.
Yeah. And just as a bit of trivia, the designer of this pin, her name is Brooke Condolora. She was actually in the booth behind, kind of off to the corner of Thimbleweed. She was demoing her game, Burly Men at Sea. There was an opportunity to actually talk to her about the pin at that time. I mean, like, one of the things that I really like about it is they actually took this pin and it's sort of like an extension of the story. You look at the other pins out there, like you have Hearthstone or something like that. It's just an item. Doesn't really draw you in to what they're trying to push, but this is kind of like, this is like their story hook, and they turn it into a pin, and you look at this thing, and then, like you're saying, you have all these things that you notice and these questions that kind of come up, and it really kind of sucks you in. And that was really what drove me to it, was the fact that it was basically a story hook, and it brought you to the booth, in the indie mega booth, to figure out, what the hell is this pin about? I need to know more.
I agree with that. It really does. It is a hook. Like,
so you're saying it's not like the Drawful Owl?
I'm sorry?
I said, so you're saying it's not like the Drawful Owl?
Oh, of course not.
The one thing I didn't like about this pin, and it's like very minor, so the dead guy in the middle is actually supposed to be face down in a swamp. And when I first saw it, I thought it was a road in the middle of the desert, which I think is why I didn't immediately recognize the game it was from. But that was like my only complaint about it.
You know what? I thought that's what that was too.
Yeah, it's actually a swamp. And then there's like those lines that you think are like the road paint are supposed to be like water lines. And then there's like those little reeds, I guess, they're supposed to be sticking in the swamp. And I thought that was like, I don't know, a desert cactus growing in the middle of the road or something at first.
It can be anything you want it to be.
Back to Sam's comments about the 70s and Nostromo and same with Serenity talking about Alien. The thing that struck me about the pin is it just made me feel the nostalgia of growing up with the Atari 2600. And the pin felt like a lot of those games given in pin form.
Yeah, it does look very retro.
I like that they were able to take a lot of complex ideas and distill them down into very like sleek, simple design into something that is visually interesting. You know, like it may not be. And I'll be honest, like when I looked at this one on the entirety of the Pin Quest, you know, I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, well that's kind of interesting. I don't know what it is, but it really like it wants you to come back and take a look at it and you know take a couple more passes to kind of just really figure out what's going on there. And it's all the subtle touches here, just in terms of how they designed most of this. It's mostly the character work. I really appreciate how you can get so much character into what are essentially stick figures.
Yeah, I think the artist really understood the medium as well. She just did such a great job defining, you know, the shapes of the pin without adding too much detail, but then somehow incorporating so much detail in the content of the artwork instead of like the actual line work.
All right, so we've done quite a bit on things that you guys liked from West. What about stuff that maybe didn't hold up as well?
I fucking hate the hexapal pin. Before I go into that, though, can we just talk about, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I like completely forgot that Brutal Legend was a pin.
I hate that pin.
I didn't even remember the entirety of West that was a pin that I should maybe get, because I probably saw it on the Pin Quest and was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Did anyone actually get that pin?
I skipped it.
So we have no idea if that looks like shit in real life, too.
I looked at it in real life and it looks like shit.
Cool.
I saw it on the Pin Quest and I was like, well, I really like Double Fine. Let's go check this out. But, like, you know, I walked up to it. I thought Hexapal was kind of cute. It is very plain, and I know you hate it, Chelsea. But Brutal Legend, oh my gosh, awful.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean...
In ways that no words can describe. You know, cool that they have different pin backer cards, but Double Fine was not on their pin game this year. Or this PAX, rather. Yeah,
so, I mean, aside from that, like, that wasn't even on my radar. But the Hexapal is pretty much everything that I hate in a pin summed up.
I mean, whoa, it's not soft enamel.
It's not soft enamel. That is the only thing that would make it worse. It's disgusting. I didn't even like go to look at these pins, obviously. So I don't know if it's actually that disgusting flesh color or if that's just the digital version, but that's like the worst color I've ever seen. This is exactly what I was saying as the opposite of what I like, because it looks like somebody, you know, learned how to use Photoshop after 5 minutes, made a shape, and then they were like, well, let's make it cute, and then drew a stupid face on it, and they were like, perfect, it's a pin, it's done. There's nothing to me that says that somebody that knows how to actually make any kind of art or design made this pin. It looks like somebody that they were like, shit, we need a pin. Bob, go do it. And then that guy shit out a pin. So I clearly.
So to be fair, Hexapal actually does look exactly like this. I do not think they should have chosen Hexapal to be a pin.
It's a thing. I don't even know. Is it like it from a game? Okay,
it's a game.
I mean,
it's from a game. It's from.
So Fawnn, you need to work on your shit talking. One, if it was a designer, his name would be Robert, not Bob. Two,
he's not a designer.
They wouldn't have used Photoshop. They would have opened up Pixlr Editor in their Microsoft Edge browser.
Yes.
But yeah, this is from a game. It's from Broken Age, and I was actually really excited about the game. I'm really disappointed they chose Hexapal out of everything they could have possibly picked from the game. But the one thing that super bothers me about this pin is that the hexagon isn't even like square or hex, whatever. Like, it's the edges are just kind of wonky.
Yeah, it's not like actually like a shape. They just went for it. And I actually just
freehanded this hexagon.
I just Googled Hexapal because I didn't know it was a thing. I literally thought someone just like shat this out into Photoshop. Apparently it's a thing, but it looks way cuter in every other thing that I've found of it. It has little expressions, and there's one that has like a eye patch or something, just random shit that would make it more interesting. And they chose the most basic, just shape plus face. And not to mention, they didn't even like make the face look like it does in the game or in any other iteration of this character.
Maybe the hexapals. Like, I'm trying to think about what they are in the game, and I think they're like these little like robot friends that are on the spaceship with him.
Yeah, they're like
One
these
of the
cute
main
little
characters.
guys. They have like arms and legs, and their eyes are like spread out, and it like their eyes overlap kind of the outer design and stuff, and it's just much more dynamic and interesting. And then when you look at this pin, it's like they just pasted this face onto something that already looks crappy. And it's just, I don't know.
And I don't know where there's some silk screening on the, I guess, inner second outline of the face, and I don't know where that striping silk screening pattern came from, because I don't really see it in the actual character. I guess there's a little bit of it, but it's very, very subtle. But yeah, I mean, I wish they had put more arms and legs.
TheFawnn, based on your critique, would you say that the hexapal would order a pumpkin spice latte given the opportunity at a Starbucks?
It's pretty fucking basic.
I think we can all agree
The
that...
answer is yes.
I think we can all agree that one of the saving graces of this pin is that it is prime for paint modding.
I believe you mean
2.0
West.
pin. If you want your own. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
So hold on.
It's good for modding.
2-bat costs $15.
Yeah.
Who else hates pins and why?
So people might hate me for this, but I really hate the U6 pin. Like Meeseeks, the actual character, he's cute because his eyes are like kind of like dotty and cute. I don't know. I feel like they covered up the cute part of him with this awful rendition of a virtual reality headset, which is so bad that they actually have to label it with the letters VR to indicate that it is a virtual reality headset. And then they included everything creepy about the character, which is his weird yellow teeth and way too wide grin. Am I gonna get a lot of hate on that?
I think the pin captured a lot of the fandom of Rick and Morty in caricature. This pin is what I think of when I think of Rick and Morty fans lined up for that line early in the morning every day.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I really like the Meeseeks character because like I think he is cute and they covered up his cute little eyes. If I saw this quote-unquote virtual reality headset on its own, I would obviously not think it was a virtual reality headset. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me.
I was more alluding to
that.
the fact that I think that the average Rick and Morty fan is a drooling mouth breather that resembles the pin.
Oh, I see. Okay.
No, I agree. I agree on the fact that like that is a sad effort at trying to render a VR headset. Like that's not what that looks like. And I like how they just wrote VR on it just to make sure that you know that's what it is. When you have the VR set, like the merch set, which clearly they're using a VR headset in those pins, but then it's just a sad comparison.
I'm slightly confused why they chose to make the straps on the VR headset red.
Yeah, what are they like piercing into his face? Like what's going on?
I mean, that's what it really looks like.
You know, it does look like they're like Borg tubes going into his face and like sucking his blood out or something. That's kind of what it looks like. They don't even go around his head.
Or they're just like the VR headset is dug so deeply into his flesh that it's now ripping it forward.
Yeah, that's plausible also.
You're putting way too much thought into this. My viewpoint was, you know what? One regular arm of glasses won't hold it up. Let's put 2 arms on there.
I think even that's too much thought. I think the artist just drew it, and then they were like, fuck it. Looks kind of like a VR headset. Let's slap VR on there to make sure people know.
I think the artist has never seen a virtual reality headset before.
Hey, Bob, open up Photoshop. You got 5 minutes.
Yo, Bob, after you're finished designing that fucking hexapal, draw a VR headset on this Meeseeks. All right, cool.
Poor Bob can't get any play
I think
here.
that the idea for this pin was sound, right? Because it's Rick and Morty, a very popular IP. It's a VR experience. Like they're really doubling. Adult Swim is really doubling down on kind of that gimmick for this demo. So it makes sense. Like it ties that all in together. Like, hey, here's a character that you like that they assume that their fan base is going to like. Let's tie it back into what it is we're trying to sell you, sort of thing. The idea makes sense to me on paper.
Of course, yeah. It's a decent idea to sell a pin, and I think not even sell it. I guess you had to demo it to get it.
I do like how it ties into the show set, which has Gabe, Tycho, and Kemper wearing VR headsets. And I thought, it could have worked out really well if it wasn't such a shitty pin.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the comparison to the show set makes it even worse, right? Because then you look at the show set and you're like, man, they really pulled off that headset. And then you look at that one and you're like, oh God, what have they done?
Yes.
I mean, that's debatable. I just I'm really averse to a lot of the VR experience and the VR subculture. I will say that I whenever I see the Kemper from that set, all I can think of is Splinter Cell.
I totally see that.
Sam, what pins do you hate?
What pins do I hate? That's a very good question. I hate the runic pin this year, which is sad because I do love that company and I love a lot of the things that they do, and I feel like they were.
Oh, I actually really like the runic pin.
Okay, well, let's have that discussion. I think this pin is utter garbage. I think it has a lot of interesting things going on for it, but at the end of the day, it's very busy and it's very difficult to discern what it is they're trying to draw for you here. I see some type of robot. I see a plant in the background, and then I see another flower in the foreground.
So, yeah, I mean, that's true. I didn't really actually think about trying to discern what was exactly going on. And I thought it was just a nice pin. And it does have a circle in the background, but the circle is minimized. And I really like the use of the really bold outer ring. And that actually goes along with Runic's other pins, the Sprite and the, I forget what the second pin was called. Yeah, the Hob pin. So, I don't know. I thought it tied in very nicely with the other two pins.
So I like this pin better than their second pin, the Hob pin from last year. But I also don't like the Hob character design that much. I think it looks a little silly, and also the pin translation of that character again looks pretty silly.
Yeah, I didn't like the Hob pin. That was my least favorite pin of the runic pins. I don't know. This pin actually kind of reminded me of Bastion from Overwatch, which is kind of why I think I like it. I didn't think it was a particularly offensive pin.
There are a lot of elements in here that I do like and I do appreciate, right? And they're all things that we've talked about before. So like line weight plays a key in here. This was clearly a sketch by an artist, and it was made in that fashion. They took some attention in terms of composition, right? So they have that background, but it's a part of the design as a whole. It's a little dynamic because he's off center coming out of that, and it doesn't take up a ton of area or surface area as a backdrop behind him. It's a couple things, right? It's like the design's way too busy, and it's hard to convey what this character actually is supposed to be on first glance. The colors don't have enough contrast, in my opinion. And also, I think that almost want to say that. So you know how we talked earlier about the Green Dragon and how I thought that was a good ratio of metal to enamel, and it gives it a real nice sheen? I think this one has the opposite effect. I think there's too much metal on here that's reflecting light. So when you look at it, it tends to reflect a lot of that back at you, wash out a lot of the design, and makes it even more difficult for you to focus in on what it is you're actually looking at.
So I will agree with you there. One of the things that really gets me that I really hate on pins is using any shade of gray as a main color. So the dominant color on this pin for the enamel fill is gray, and there are several other pins on our hate list that I noticed that have a lot of gray in them. So I think, if anything, that's the part that really bothers me. For me, that's like, I acknowledge what you don't like about it, but for me, that's the color is the only part that I really don't like.
So Runic Games, if you're listening, Sammy doesn't like your pins, but that's okay. We know that your game design can't match the third grade art level of the Adventure Time pins that he loves and cherishes so much.
Clean, simple design, Hingo. Clean, simple design. I love their first pin. I think that character design is really strong for the Hob sprite. And I think a lot of people in the community, just from talking to people at conventions for the past couple conventions in this year's circuit, feel the same way.
It's very cute too.
I definitely agree. I think Hob Sprite was their best pin. The second pin they made was bad, and this pin is like, I don't hate it, but I definitely agree with all the kind of the negative things that you listed as far as just being just overly complicated. It does look like a talented artist designed it, but at the same time, I think they just didn't think through how it was going to look once they actually put it on a pin.
I mean, the reason why I like this one more than the second one, the Hob, not the sprites. The reason I like this one more than that one is because when I look at it, I see things that I think like, yeah, this would be an interesting character design if we were to scope out on what the original art here was. And, you see this full thing. I think what we're looking at is called the construct. And I think based on the rest of the game art the assets that I've seen, it's some sort of, magical stone creature. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't really gel with me in terms of the Hob character, the character design on that pin. And just that character in general, which I think is really unfortunate because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Hob character itself is the protagonist in their game.
Correct. He is the character the game was named after. That
is real unfortunate.
Yes.
I think you guys are being a bit hypercritical, but that's, me talking. And I'm also a Runic fanboy. But the fact that none of you are dumping on the duelist pins and saying that Hob is garbage just rustles my jimmies.
The duelist pins are the worst. I only picked like one that I
Yet
hated
nobody
most.
wrote down duelist as pins that they hate. Fuck
because
all
they
of you.
blend like those two pins for me. Those two pins for me just were. It was almost like what is the other one that I just completely forgot about? Brutal Legend. They just blended into the background for me so much that I didn't even think about them until I came up on their booth and I saw them and I was like, oh god, no. And then we just walked away because I would never waste my money on something that looks that boring.
To clarify, we're talking about the two counterplay pins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so Sam did actually list these as hate pins.
Yeah.
And I actually hate them too because there's so much gray on them.
Yeah, I mean, like Sireniti just said, there's way too much gray on these. Like we've had pins in the past that have kind of had this offense before. I think the Bethesda's Cyber Demon, right? It's just a sea of gray and silver, and especially with the color gray and these tones of gray. Like when you pair that with this nickel silver color, it just washes everything out.
Yeah, it's not a great color palette. I think the other colors included don't really play well with the gray either. These are just mediocre pins to me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the circle factor is the worst. Like, please, if there's anything that I could like beg of pin designers is this comes after I just designed a circle pin, but like. If you can avoid making your pin a circle, then avoid it because it's
there. So I think these are actually two crests from this genre. So I actually think it made sense for them to make them circles, but it does add to the unfortunateness of it.
I don't know enough about this, whatever these are, to know, but it seems to me like you could take kind of the inner designs of whatever's going on these and make that the main shape instead of surrounding it by a circle, even if that's, what the crest is in the game or whatever's going on. Just give it something a little bit more dynamic than just like a round circle.
Well, I mean, personal association plays a large part in, why you choose to like a pin and why you don't like a pin. I mean, if we walk this back to when we were talking about the Thimbleweed Park pin, and Sireniti said, you were listing out all the reasons why you like that pin, and a lot of them had to do less with the actual design of the pin in front of you and more with all these free associations that you're making about other things that you do like that are important to your life, right? To like Nostromo, you really like the movie Aliens. That was, probably an important part of your pop cultural upbringing. You like the X-Files a lot, so you make that reference in terms of when you see a man and a woman shadowed like that smoking a cigarette for some reason are thinking of the X-Files. Like all of those things are kind of triggering your memories and informing your decision on why is this design important to me.
I agree. That's definitely like playing into the collector's mindset of like which pins they like and which pins are nostalgic to them. But yeah, I just want to mention, I did just look up the counterplay duelist pins, these two pins we're talking about, and the original artwork actually looks phenomenal. So this is all on the pin artist. Unfortunately, he or she did a really shitty job.
I don't know if it's like a lot of this is just the color. Honestly, it was just a real misstep.
I think it's part of it's the color, and the other part I believe is like what details they chose to include on the pin. But yeah, like the color is a huge misstep, I agree.
I mean, like, objectively, if you look at this and you say, like, hey, what if the metal was that black nickel instead? I think that a lot of the details would be more defined. It would give your eye something to focus on. You would probably hate it slightly less.
I have to agree with Sireniti on this. I just looked up the art for this game as well, and I just think it's a huge missed opportunity that they went for these crests, because there are some amazing character designs in this game that I had no idea existed. And they could have done any of these, and it would have been miles better than doing 2 circular crests. I just think it was a big mistake.
I mean, there are 2 trains of thought, I think, when people are looking at, designing something as a promotional item, right? On the one hand, like, you either go with a character and you go with a dynamic character design, or 2, you go with a logo or a graphically designed representation of something.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a miss on their part to go with the kind of like graphic logo side of it.
I actually don't mind the crests, honestly. I think whoever designed the pins just did an awful job translating the crests into pins.
So speaking of shitty circular pins with bad color jobs, Sireniti, what do you think about Claptrap?
Oh gosh. It's so bad. So Claptrap looks like, I don't even know how to describe this pin. It's this giant circle, and, it's really kind of, they use bright colors in this, but it's kind of washed out, and then the shapes are not artistic at all. They're just like very plain angular shapes, and Claptrap is cute. He's very iconic, and they just did a really bad job with this pin. I don't know. Chelsea, can you weigh in on this, because I feel like you would hate this pin. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah,
but I just can't.
No, I definitely also hate it. I didn't waste my money on this. You're right. Like, the colors are washed out, and I think that was a design choice, and it was a bad one. This circle is terrible. I don't know what this trend to put circles behind things that are interesting is, but it really should stop. I feel like if it had just been him and they had, maybe like filled in where the arms are or whatever, if they were concerned about small pieces, which I assume is what started this or what kind of like spawned it, it would have been so much better without that circle. And why that color, that like horrible washed out teal blue? I don't know. Just the whole thing is bad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, we talk a lot about kind of, having these large, expansive backgrounds as kind of missed opportunities or just unnecessary. And this is kind of a good example of that when we're talking about it. It does have elements of things that we liked when we were talking about some of the other pins. So like Thimbleweed Park, for example, with the heads protruding and breaking out of the horizon landscape borders, as well as the smoke curl coming up and breaking slightly out of that border as well. Claptrap does this too, like his antenna comes up and his bottom wheel comes out slightly from the circle. But just in general, there's really just no reason for the circle to be here. The design of the little robot is interesting enough. If you're familiar with the IP, they can actually get a surprising amount of character and personality out of something that's essentially a box on a wheel. And unfortunately, that just did not translate into, what we're seeing here.
That was kind of my thought too. I mean, you have a pin like Thimbleweed Park where it's already, basically like an 8-bit pixelated game, right? And they kind of kept that simplicity because that's the idea of the game. But this, I mean, they had so much opportunity here to put more character and more personality into this drawing, and they just oversimplified it to the point where you get nothing out of it, especially if you've never played the game and you look at that, you're not going to want to buy that pin.
It's so surprising too, because the Borderlands, it's a cel-shaded game, so they have plenty of opportunity to make a very interesting character with a lot of segmented shadowing, a lot of segmented design. They could have, given it a 3/4 angle and maybe changed his hand poses.
And Claptrap as a character has so much personality. I mean, as a robot especially, right? And I think it's interesting that his one kind of humanizing trait, well, I don't know, I guess his arms are pretty humanizing, but his eye, or his video lens, is kind of just blended in with that weird metal background that they made on the top of him, whereas it's this very intense blue in the game. And I don't know why they decided to do that. This palette just doesn't remind me of Borderlands at all. It's kind of this really dark, edgy art style, and this is just I don't even know what this is. It's like weird pastel kindergarten hospital theme.
A large part of the problem on this pin that I'd be willing to go so far as say is a cardinal sin in terms of pin design is that there's way too much metallic surface area reflecting too much light. And we've talked about it a lot in some of the other pin designs of why they're not working. And this one in particular, it has too much of that. So when you look at it, it reflects all that light back at you, and it washes out what your eye can pick up on the design.
It's just a terrible pin design. They put minimal effort into it, and it shows.
That said, like with all my critiques on it, I like the pin, and the only reason that I like the pin is because I like that IP. I love Borderlands. Like I played Borderlands with my wife. We played countless hours of all of those games together. So from, a personal perspective, right, like that, the pin has value to me because it evokes those memories. But I mean, I agree, like objectively, when we're looking at the design, it's disappointing. This reminds me of about, kind of, we had that tease about the Nintendo licensed pins coming out. And I know a lot of people in the community are very excited about those. I can see a scenario in which we get a Nintendo pin and people are just excited that it's a Nintendo pin, but objectively, the design is just going to be a miss.
Yeah, I'm worried.
I still hope it's that they bought like the IP at auction for the Addams Family NES game.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Well, Adam, I don't know if you know this, but there is recently a community pin put out there for the best pin-related podcast for Penny Arcade.
Oh,
and
which pin is that?
This pin, the Pinnypals After Dark pin.
Oh, I've heard good things about it.
This pin has come with critical acclaim from Penny Arcade staff members, forumers, Slack members, and even ourselves. And
especially ourselves, right?
Yes.
And looking at the pin quest for West 2016, there were 6 circle pins and 1 oval pin, and the community pin is the only one that actually looked fucking good. So I'm hoping that this either forces them to step up their game in the circle department, or they stop using it altogether until they can get on our level.
Listen, it's not hard to design a fucking circle pin, all right?
Draw a circle. Step 2. Put some font in it. Done. Perhaps make one of the elements glow in the dark.
Add glitter.
Add glitter.
Maybe. With taste.
I mean, it's all about just making it look like a trashy nightclub. That's all you have to do.
That really was the theme of it, and I have to say it turned out really well.
It works. It works.
If I'm someone in the community, I have an idea for community pin. Like, where does design fall?
If you're choosing to design a pin and you're not attached to a corporation that depends on you for marketing and making revenue off of this pin, I think you should do whatever the fuck you want. I think you should pour a lot of time and love into it and just make it your own.
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends on what you want to do with it, right? Like, if you want a pin that's going to appeal to a lot of people, then design absolutely matters. And you should get somebody that's good at design, and you should pay them money for it. Because, I'm serious, because if you don't, they're just not going to want to do it for you again. And
yeah,
you should pay artists.
Give a shit.
Always pay artists, because it's awesome, and they're doing work for you. Yay! But seriously, it depends. It totally depends. If you're not going to use it, if it's like completely for yourself and that's all you plan to do with it and you just want to like hand it out to people, do whatever you want, make it a piece of poop and just like throw it at people. I don't know. But like if you actually want to try to trade for it, or if you want people to be interested in it, and if if you want people to ask questions about like what you're representing or what you're, going for, design is, the number one priority here. That's what draws people to a pin. Obviously, the manufacturing quality is important as well. If you have a shittily made but really awesomely designed pin, it's not gonna be good still. I don't know. I think it's super important.
Mass appeal and design will become more important if more people decide that they want to start creating community pins, because if as soon as you start increasing the population of those pins out there for trade, people start getting more choosy when they realize, okay, well, there are like 20 community pins.
There's more choice. Yep.
I have a choice here between like 20 designs. Maybe I don't want all of them. Maybe like 15 of these were not thought out 100% here. and the end product just is not as strong as these other 5. So if it comes down to it and I can only trade for 5 pins, I'm going to try to get the 5 that are the best.
That's true, and especially if you're, I guess if you're representing a whole community and you're designing for the community, first of all, you should pay the artist. Secondly, you should really... Design is important in that sense when you're representing a large body, and you should think about how appealing the design is and how it will represent whatever it is you're trying to represent. So, for instance, with the Pinnypals After Dark pin, we put a microphone on it and we made it look good because those were our goals. But if you look at someone, for instance, we ran into this guy at the Discord booth named his handle is T-Love Tech. I believe he goes by T-Love, but I believe he just made this own pin. It's very cute. It's a little shark, and it's a very great design. It's adorable, and it's got a little heart on it. And that's just his own pin, and everybody freaking wants it because it's adorable and it's a great design, and you can tell that he put a lot of love into it, and it just spoke for itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as soon as we kind of caught wind of this pin that he designed, everybody wanted it, and that was obviously just completely due to it being a really good design. It didn't have to be the Penny Arcade brand. It was just a really cute pin, and honestly, that's just what's most important. If you want to appeal to a lot of people, you have to have a good design.
I mean, what I would love to see is that, from like years down the road, people are still bringing these community designed pins to conventions, and they're interesting conversations to have because you see this awesome pin, this pin with a shark with a heart on it, and you're like, hey, that's a really cool pin. Where did you get it? And you're like, oh, well, I got it like 2 years ago from da-da-da-da-da, right? And you talk about, what you recall of it, the person you got it from, or who you traded for it. Like, I really enjoy the community pin, like the aspect of the community pins that I really enjoy are just the personalization and the choice that it creates for the pin collecting community.
If you're designing a pin for a community, definitely ask for tons and tons of feedback. I think that's the best way that you're gonna narrow in on a design that everybody likes. I know, like, there's some part of it where, like, oh, it's, like, a secret and you don't want to reveal it until the big moment where, like, PAX and, like, everyone's wearing these awesome pins and everyone wants to ask about them. But definitely have, like, a good spread of people that are artists or are designers, and then also people from just regular pin collectors weigh in on how they think the pin looks. And then I think you'll be successful if you follow their advice.
It's true. I mean, we saw success with the P-pad pin because of that, right? Like, I probably redesigned and redid the font 18 to 20 times just from feedback from you guys, and it's miles better than it would have been if I had just gone with the first design that I had. So feedback is super important.
Yeah, I really like that aspect too. Like, I don't like doing things. I don't like creating things in a vacuum. I think it's important to have multiple voices at the table. I mean, that's certainly something that you could do if you wanted to create your own pin. And I think we talked about that earlier. If you have a pin and you just want to execute that design and you don't care if anybody else is going to like it, but it's something that you want to exist into the world, that's perfectly fine. But you just have to recognize that then becomes a vanity project.
And with that, I think we should bring this episode to a close. Once again, I thank all three of you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings to a close another episode of After Dark. After Dark is hosted by Hingo, lazorz, theaggrocraig, and yours truly, adambarg. Special thanks to Sireniti, TheFawnn, Sammy.Sam, and Evanephrine for their contributions. Until next time, peace.